out to Tupac for all them royalties. Tupac built this house, you hear me? We in the house now.
When investigators finally stepped inside the mansion tied to Tupac's final days, what they uncovered shattered decades of silence, unraveling million-dollar secrets, hidden alliances, and a truth so explosive it would rewrite everything we thought we knew about his death. On the surface, it was just another Hollywood success story, a young black man who defied the odds, turning poetry into power, pain into platinum, and struggle into a global movement. Tupac Shakur wasn't just a rapper, he was a revolutionary voice, a mirror for an entire generation fighting against the same system that tried to silence him. So when he was shot in that infamous Las Vegas drive-by on September 7, 1996, and passed away 6 days later, the world didn't just lose an artist. It lost a messenger. But what most people never knew is that the mansion where Tupac spent his final months was more than a home. It was a vault of secrets, a place that, years later, would become the center of one of hip-hop's darkest investigations. That Mediterranean-style estate at 4730 Azucena Road in Woodland Hills looked like pure luxury, nearly 6,000 square feet of polished success. High ceilings, massive windows pouring in sunlight, tropical greenery wrapping the property in privacy. On paper, it was paradise. Inside, it was a young man's dream: 6 bedrooms, 5 baths, a heated pool with a waterfall, arcade games, and slot machines Tupac had installed himself. But beneath that glossy surface was a truth few ever suspected. Tupac didn't own the mansion. Despite the record sales, the fame, the image of untouchable wealth, the house wasn't his. Death Row Records had leased it for him as part of the deal that got him out of prison. And just before his death, Tupac had been preparing to finally buy it with his own money, the down payment already in escrow. What looked like freedom was really a contract. What looked like luxury was a cage. And that house would soon become the key to understanding everything that went wrong. It's this detail that makes what happened next all the more tragic and suspicious. In those final months, the Woodland Hills mansion wasn't just a home, it was alive. A constant blur of motion, music, and people. Tupac lived there with his fiancée Kidada Jones, daughter of the legendary Quincy Jones, along with his mother Afeni Shakur, his sister Sekiwa, her daughters, members of the Outlaws, teenage cousins, and a rotating circle of friends who drifted in and out like family. Visitors described the house as a mix between a fraternity and a creative commune, laughter echoing through the halls, late-night jam sessions, impromptu cookouts, and that unmistakable energy that seemed to follow Tupac everywhere. But beneath the noise, beneath the celebration, something darker was taking shape. A silence that only became clear after his final breath. On September 13, 1996, the world stopped to mourn. Fans cried, artists paid tribute, and the industry honored the loss of a voice too powerful to replace. But behind closed doors, at that same Woodland Hills mansion, something cold, calculated, and deeply unsettling was already underway. Within 2 months of Tupac's death, the property was completely cleared out by associates tied to Death Row Records, some reportedly connected directly to Suge Knight. This wasn't estate management. It was a military-style sweep. Trucks pulled in, valuables pulled out, jewelry, awards, gold and platinum plaques, vehicles including his 1996 Hummer H1, even professional studio gear from his home setup. The BMW 750iL from the shooting was impounded separately. But everything else? Gone. The precision and speed of the operation raised immediate questions. Why the rush? What were they protecting, or hiding? No official raid. No law enforcement inventory. No public record. The home was leased through Death Row, so it fell outside probate court oversight. Officially, they called it asset protection. But to those who looked closer, it felt like evidence destruction, a cleanup meant to bury the truth about Tupac's finances and his real position under Death Row's control. When it was all over, what remained told its own quiet, haunting story. Empty wall spaces where plaques once hung. Scratches on the garage floor for motorcycles that would never return. Deep carpet imprints where furniture and studio rigs once stood. It looked less like a home, and more like a scene scrubbed clean. A crime not of violence, but of control. A theft not of possessions, but of legacy. Yet amid everything that was erased, one thing still remained, one physical remnant that would become the final undeniable trace of Tupac's last days inside that house. Near the pool, one haunting detail still remains, a hand-carved inscription in the concrete reading, "Outlaws, let no man separate what we create." Words taken from his song, made N***Z, etched by Tupac himself during a late-night backyard session surrounded by friends. Nearly 3 decades later, the carving is still there. Weathered but visible, carefully preserved through renovations, even highlighted in modern real estate listings. It stands as the last physical mark of a man who once filled that house with life, laughter, and music. A man who carved his message of unity and loyalty into the very stone of a home he never truly owned. From there, the mansion's story turned into a real estate success saga. Since 1989, it's changed hands 7 times, rising from a modest $250,000 land value in 1994 to a multi-million-dollar property. After Tupac's death, it sold on May 16, 1997 for $920,000 to David Weiner, then again on December 28, 1999 for $1.2 million to Lure Dimant, better known as DJ Lethal of Limp Bizkit and House of Pain. Over the years, the home kept appreciating, renovated, expanded, rebranded. By September 3, 2025, it sold once more for $3.4 million to an undisclosed buyer, with a current Zillow estimate of roughly $3.43 million. More than $1 million in upgrades have been poured into the property. Modern finishes, luxury amenities, and restored Mediterranean charm. Today, realtors call it an entertainer's paradise. But while the house thrived, Tupac's legacy was quietly being buried under legal red tape, corporate greed, and years of exploitation. His mansion had been stripped of possessions, but the true treasures, the unreleased songs, handwritten lyrics, and unreleased archives, were scattered across Los Angeles, in forgotten storage units, private studios, and collections belonging to producers who once worked beside him. When those fragments finally surfaced years later, they revealed a disturbing pattern, one of systematic theft and manipulation that started long before Tupac's murder and continued long after. It turned his legacy into a war zone, where art, money, and justice collided in ways that would devastate even his most loyal fans. The stage was now set for what came next: the estate inventory, and the discovery of hidden vaults that exposed the full scale of what had been taken. When administrators led by Tupac Shakur and attorney Richard Fishbein compiled the first estate inventory in late 1996, the results were jaw-dropping, but not for the reasons people expected. For a man who had sold over $60 million in records by that year, the numbers were shocking. Tupac Shakur died with an estimated net worth of only $200,000 to $500,000, weighed down by nearly $4.9 million in debt owed to Death Row Records for advances, lifestyle expenses, and production costs. How could a global superstar who generated millions die virtually broke? The answer revealed one of the most brazen cases of financial exploitation in music history, a system designed to keep artists indebted and dependent while those in power grew richer. Tupac died intestate, without a will. His estate was probated under California law, focusing only on what little he personally owned. The list was heartbreakingly thin. A 1996 BMW 750iL, the same black vehicle from the Vegas shooting. A 1996 Hummer H1, valued around $50,000. A Jaguar XJS, acquired through a commercial appearance, worth roughly $61,000. But even these came with strings attached, financed or advanced through Death Row and later deducted from his royalties. His financial accounts painted an even bleaker picture. One checking account, holding somewhere between $15,000 and $105,000, quickly drained by legal fees and taxes. A modest life insurance policy worth only 5 figures. No real estate, no stocks, no retirement funds, no trust. Even his jewelry told a story of debt. Diamond-studded Death Row pendants and luxury pieces worth hundreds of thousands were never fully paid for. $115,577 owed to BL Diamonds and $5,045 to 14 Carats Jewelers, both of which later sued his estate. It was the cruelest irony of all, that the man who wrote "I'm living every day like it's my last" had everything taken from him before he could truly own any of it. The awards and memorabilia, gold and platinum plaques from albums like All Eyes on Me, Me Against the World, Thug Life, and Tupacalypse Now, had all vanished from the mansion soon after Tupac's death. Associates of Death Row Records removed them quietly, their total value never properly listed in the official estate inventory. But the most damning proof of exploitation didn't lie in what was missing, it was buried in the numbers. The debts Death Row claimed Tupac owed were staggering, and their accounting system was as tangled as it was deceptive. Yes, the label had covered his bail, a sum estimated between $1.40 and $1.5 million, but they'd also slipped in a mountain of questionable expenses. Among them, $23,857 for a Porsche Tupac never owned, $2,700 for Nate Dogg's child support, $2,645 for Suge Knight's wife's American Express bill, more than $300,000 in luxury hotel stays at the peninsula, and lease payments on multiple properties, including a $120,000 Malibu home and a $57,600 Wilshire apartment, neither of which Tupac ever lived in. Even the furniture from one of his leased apartments, valued at over $100,000, mysteriously disappeared after his death, hauled away to an undisclosed location. Afeni Shakur would later claim death row had billed her son for $7.1 million in fake or inflated charges, while withholding nearly $17 million in unpaid royalties and advances. At the heart of it all was a 3-page handwritten prison contract from 1995, the same deal Suge Knight presented when bailing Tupac out of jail. Legal experts later called it nothing but toilet paper. It was riddled with conflicts of interest and designed to keep Tupac permanently trapped, a superstar chained by debt to the very empire he'd built. And the exploitation didn't end with the money. The estate's first inventory shockingly undervalued Tupac's intellectual property. While every car, chain, and bank statement was meticulously recorded, the real treasure, his unreleased songs, lyrics, poems, and film scripts, was ignored. Those works, later appraised at well over $100 million, were simply missing from the books. That wasn't an accident, it was a strategy. If the estate didn't know the assets existed, they couldn't fight for them. And if they couldn't fight for them, Death Row and its affiliates could quietly keep exploiting Tupac's art for profit. But Afeni Shakur wasn't the kind of woman to surrender. A former Black Panther, trained in law and driven by unshakable love for her son, she launched a decades-long legal war to reclaim what was rightfully his. In 1997, she founded Amaru Entertainment, a company built specifically to manage Tupac's posthumous catalog, his music, his film rights, and his legacy. And as she began digging, the discoveries that followed would stun the world. The first clues surfaced in the most unlikely places, storage units scattered across Los Angeles. Each one a hidden vault of forgotten history. At Public Storage Unit 247 on Ventura Boulevard, investigators uncovered over 100 DAT tapes from Tupac's death row sessions, spanning 1995 to 1996, containing raw vocals, unfinished remixes, and early versions of songs that would later become classics. Another cache, Unit 189 at StoreQuest in Van Nuys, held mixing boards, hard drives, and even demo reels from Tupac's early 90s recording days. Some items resurfaced years later in the strangest ways, including a 2016 Craigslist listing that led to a $250,000 auction in March 2025, featuring unreleased tracks and handwritten lyrics from 1990 to 1991. But the storage discoveries were just the beginning. Producers and collaborators soon came forward with their own private archives. Johnny J revealed over 40 unreleased tracks from his sessions with Tupac. Daz Dillinger, who helped craft hits like Ambitions as a Rider, two of America's Most Wanted, and I Ain't Mad at Cha, admitted he too had dozens of unreleased recordings locked away. Each revelation added another layer to the mystery, and another reason to question how much of Tupac's art had been hidden, hoarded, or stolen since his death.
Shout out to Tupac for all them royalties. Tupac built this house, you hear me? We in the house now.
The vaults, the battles, and the legacy. Daz Dillinger would later claim in a 2025 interview, while giving a tour of his mansion, that the entire estate was funded by royalties from his work with Tupac. And he wasn't exaggerating. Daz had produced classics that continued generating money nearly 3 decades after Pac's death. Meanwhile, Shock G held some of the earliest demo tapes from Tupac's Digital Underground days, while DJ King Assassin and Herb G-Biz possessed additional unreleased material. Major studios across Los Angeles, Can-Am, American, Death Row's Tarzana Compound, and Larrabee Sound, were found to contain original masters for tracks like To Live and Die in LA and Made N***AZ**. Early counts suggested around 200 unreleased songs existed after Tupac's passing. But by 2025, industry insiders estimated that number could be closer to 400 to 500 tracks, including over 80 Death Row era recordings still locked away due to ongoing ownership disputes. And the surprises didn't stop at the music. Tupac's unreleased writings were just as astonishing. Among them were deeply personal handwritten poems, like In the Event of My Demise, written before his death but published posthumously, and Genesis, The Rebirth of My Heart, dedicated to his first love, Renee Ross. Friends such as Jada Pinkett Smith later shared never-before-seen verses, including a 2021 poem released for what would have been Tupac's 50th birthday. Even alternate versions of iconic songs surfaced, like Dear Mama featuring Yo-Yo, and the original California Love, found through lawsuits and museum exhibits. These rediscoveries powered a new era of posthumous releases, beginning with 7 core studio albums, eventually expanding to over a dozen projects, compilations, and film soundtracks, each distributed under Amaro Entertainment and Interscope Records. The first of these, Are You Still Down? Remember Me, dropped in 1997 and went 4 times platinum, built mostly from early demo recordings. The 1998 Greatest Hits album, featuring unreleased tracks like Changes and Unconditional Love, hit diamond status, 10 times platinum. And Until the End of Time, 2001, debuted at number 1, its master tape so valuable that armed security was required during transport. By 2008, Tupac's estate was earning $15 to $20 million annually through royalties, licensing, and global sales. In total, posthumous releases sold over 40 million units worldwide, boosting his career total to more than 75 million. As of 2025, the estate's valuation exceeded $400 million, a staggering rise from the mere $200,000 listed after his death. But this transformation didn't happen overnight. Every dollar, every recovered track, came through years of fierce legal warfare, a mother's relentless fight to reclaim what had been stolen. Afeni's battle began just 7 months after her son's death. In April 1997, she filed a massive lawsuit against Death Row Records, accusing the label of operating like a criminal enterprise, siphoning more than $50 million in unpaid royalties, especially from All Eyes on Me, which had already gone 5 times platinum by then. Death Row fired back with its own claims, insisting Tupac owed them millions in advances, including $1.4 million for bail, $2 million for production costs, and dozens of bogus expenses, like $23,857 for a Porsche Tupac never owned. Afeni's legal team struck back hard. They argued that the 1995 prison contract was invalid, signed under duress and riddled with conflicts of interest, essentially enslaving Tupac to the very label that controlled his freedom. The case eventually settled out of court in 1998, with monumental consequences. Under the agreement, Amaro Entertainment regained ownership of over 150 unreleased masters, half of Tupac's alleged debt was forgiven, and his royalty rate was upgraded to 18%, one of the highest ever negotiated for a posthumous artist. That single victory opened the floodgates. It made possible the early posthumous albums that would generate millions, and cemented Afeni Shakur's place not just as Tupac's mother, but as the guardian of his legacy. But her fight was far from over. What came next would connect the dots between the money, the music, and the murder investigation itself, revealing how deep the corruption in Death Row truly ran. The legal legacy and the shadow of justice. When Death Row Records filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2006, Afeni Shakur once again went to war for her son's legacy. By 2008, she had successfully negotiated a global settlement, reclaiming more unreleased tracks, securing a $5 million advance from Interscope Records, and obtaining further royalty upgrades tied to Tupac's catalog. But when Canadian media company Entertainment One, E1, acquired Death Row's assets in 2009, the fight started all over again. In September 2013, Afeni filed a major lawsuit against E1, accusing them of breaching a 2007 contract related to Beginnings, the lost tapes. She demanded $1.1 million in unpaid royalties and the return of unreleased masters still in the company's possession. After 5 years of litigation, the case settled in October 2018, with the estate receiving an estimated 7-figure payout, reportedly between $1 to $2 million, and ownership of additional unreleased material potentially worth millions more. The victory was celebrated as a symbolic reclaiming of Tupac's art from corporate control. But it also exposed how many powerful entities had quietly profited from his work for decades. Then, tragedy struck again. On May 2, 2016, Afeni Shakur passed away from a heart attack. In her will, she named Tom Whalley, the former Interscope executive who first signed Tupac in 1991, as executor of the estate and Amaro Entertainment. Under Whalley's leadership, Tupac's brand continued to thrive, albums were remastered, documentaries were funded, and his legacy stayed alive in the public eye. But behind the scenes, family tensions began to build. In January 2022, Tupac's half-sister Tupac Shakur filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles Superior Court accusing Wally of embezzling over $5.5 million in the 5 years following Afeni's death. The filing claimed Wally had paid himself excessive management fees, including $1.7 million in 2019 alone, withheld personal property such as Tupac's cars, jewelry, and platinum plaques, and mismanaged the family trust. Sekiwa's legal team demanded his removal as executor, full accounting of assets, and financial restitution. What the lawsuit revealed next shocked even longtime fans. Several personal Tupac artifacts, handwritten lyrics, jewelry, and clothing, allegedly controlled by Wally had appeared in the Wake Me When I'm Free Museum, a high-profile immersive exhibit that ran in Los Angeles from January 2022 to January 2025. The exhibit drew praise for its emotional storytelling and featured Tupac's final outfits, sculptures, and a 350 handcuff installation representing Afeni's activism. But Sekiwa's lawsuit accused Wally of displaying estate property without family consent, while denying relatives access to those same items. By 2025, the museum quietly shut down, citing low attendance and financial strain, but the legal war raged on. As of October 2025, court filings show ongoing disputes over Wally's compliance with asset disclosure orders. The estate, now valued at over $400 million, has become a battlefield where family loyalty, financial power, and the fight to preserve Tupac's legacy collide. Yet the courtroom drama wasn't the only legal front making headlines. In May 2025, 3 federal lawsuits were filed by the estate of Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad against Tupac's estate, Death Row, Interscope, and Universal Music Group. The claim, unauthorized use of a 7-line sample from Muhammad's 1993 Black Holocaust Nationhood Conference speech in Tupac's White Man's World, from the Don Killuminati, the 7-Day Theory. The Muhammad estate demanded $5 million in damages, injunctions, and full seizure of related assets, alleging that no permission, credit, or payment was ever granted for the sample. As of October 2025, those cases remain in early proceedings, with no settlements reached. And while these legal battles over money and ownership played out in courts and boardrooms, another investigation, one much darker and more personal, was quietly coming to life. Nearly 3 decades after Tupac's murder, detectives were circling back to the question that never died. Who killed Tupac Shakur? In July 2023, Las Vegas Metro Police served a search warrant at the Henderson home of Paula Clemens, wife of Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, a man long linked to the case. Keefe D., now 60, was the uncle of Orlando Anderson, the prime suspect who was himself killed 2 years after Tupac's death.
Keefe D. said there was another person in the car with them as well, another fellow Crip. That guy has also died. So he's sort of the last man standing. If there's anyone who's going to have to answer for this, presumably it might be him.
For years, Keefe D. had publicly admitted to being in the white Cadillac the night of the 1996 shooting, and had even claimed that his nephew, Anderson, pulled the trigger. Now, after decades of speculation, law enforcement was finally ready to test whether his words could lead to justice.
I'm innocent. I ain't killed nobody, never did ever kill nobody. They don't have no evidence against me.
The raid uncovered a chilling collection, magazine clippings about Tupac's death, old photographs from the 1990s, computers, hard drives, and multiple copies of Keefe D.'s own book, Compton Street Legend. These weren't lost artifacts from Tupac's estate, they belonged to Davis himself. Each item told the story of a man haunted by the truth he carried for decades, quietly holding on to memories of the night he would one day admit to orchestrating. Then in September 2023, almost 27 years after Tupac's murder, Keefe D. was finally arrested and charged with first-degree murder, use of a deadly weapon, and gang enhancement, all while already behind bars.
You said the shots came from the back. Who shot Tupac?
I keep it for the code of the streets. It just came from the backseat for it.
But prosecutors relied heavily on Davis's own 2019 memoir, Compton Street Legend, and his on-camera interviews, where he openly admitted that he was present inside the car the night Tupac was shot. Those public confessions, delivered years after the fact, became the cornerstone of the case, proof that Davis wasn't just a witness to history, but an active participant in one of hip-hop's most infamous murders. But prosecutors relied heavily on Davis's own 2019 memoir, Compton Street Legend, and his on-camera interviews, where he openly admitted that he was present inside the car the night Tupac was shot. Those public confessions, delivered years after the fact, became the cornerstone of the case.
I shouldn't have said nothing. You know what I'm saying? I shouldn't have said nothing. And I'm innocent, man.
In September 2025, more than 500 pages of grand jury transcripts were released to the public, documents that peeled back the curtain on one of hip-hop's darkest chapters. The transcripts confirmed what many had long suspected: a violent rivalry